Hello everyone, Realmfire here, and welcome to what will be the first video in a series I've been thinking about doing for quite a while now, I want to say. Uh, as many of you know, and actually if you've been around on the channel for long enough, you would know this, I play tabletop Warhammer 40k. I play the tabletop version of Warhammer 40k, I play the video game versions, I play 40k. I've played it for around 8 years now, been a fan for for bit over a decade. That sounds weird to say. And my collection does kind of reflect just how long I've played. It is huge, and in its current size and state, definitely does reflect it. I definitely have a bit of a gray legion, if you know what I mean. Um, but for those of you who are not aware of what 40k is, the galaxy is well, actually, let me state it. Yeah, let me state this. It is the 41st millennium, and the galaxy is in a state of eternal war. The aging and despotic Imperium of Man sits on the constant precipice of collapse under its own weight, all while the forces of the Dark Gods of Chaos and many Xenos alien empires gnaw and chip away at the fringes of the aging. And aging is a generous term for the Imperium of Man. Now, primarily, I play Space Marines, which in the setting are these genetically modified super soldiers of the Imperium of Mankind. However, I do have a sizable Imperial Guard army. They're just the regular dudes who fight for the Imperium. Now, I might touch on them at a later date, but today the focus is my Space Marines. And for my Space Marines, my end goal is to have a full chapter of Space Marines and this massive mega board, which includes their chapter fortress, a city, and just a lot of stuff. And mega boards can pretty much refers to tables upon tables upon tables worth of terrain. On average, a 6 foot by 4 foot table is what used to be used for 40k. Now the size of table used to play the game has changed since then, but it's still a good standard for terrain. And having way more than that is the end goal. But I mentioned something there. Chapter of Space Marines. What is a chapter of Space Marines? For those who do not know, Space Marines are organized into chapters, which, according to what is in universe called the Codex Astartes, and is the out of universe, the Space Marine rulebook, is actually in universe the rules that which the Space Marines must follow. A chapter is made up of 10 companies, each at roughly, give or take a few, 100 Marines. Our 10th company. 10th company is the Vanguard and Scout company. And starting in order of precedence, however, first company is the veteran company. So, like, these are Space Marines with decades, if not centuries, of experience fighting the enemies of the Imperium. And second through fifth are classified as battle companies. These are your four generic companies. They're pretty much going to be identical in what they have in terms of just raw firepower accessible to them. Then six through nines are reserve companies, but don't let that fool you. Those reserve companies are oftentimes made up of a ton of the same specialized unit. So like one of them is 100 heavy weapon marines. One of them is 100 fast attack marines. That kind of thing. And as I mentioned, the 10th is the Vanguard and Scout Company. Historically, it has been referred to as a Scout Company. However, with, I believe it was the ninth edition or late 8th, where they introduced Vanguard Marines, which pretty much fill the role of Scouts but are more powerful. But Scouts are staying around. So Scouts are basically the Space Marines in training. They haven't received their power armor, they haven't received all of their augmentations yet. Whereas Vanguard Marines are fully fledged Primaris Space Marines. Primaris are the newer generation of Space Marines, at least on tabletop. In lore, a lot of them are like had just been kept in cryo sleep forever. Now, there are many hundreds of chapters of Space Marines birthed from the 9 loyal Space Marine legions, and I'll get more into that lore at a later date for those who do not know about all that stuff, because as I build, I'll be talking about stuff. Now, the chapter I am building is a successor chapter, a child chapter of the 7th Legion, the Imperial Fist. They are the Sons of Dorn. That's the Legion itself. This chapter is named the Knights of Falca, and that name, 13-year-old me came up with that name, and 13-year-old me also came up with the name for this channel. So give it the respect it's due. It's just yeah. And as it stands, the models I have are currently denoted as parts of first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and 10th companies. And to know what I'm lacking, or for you to know what I'm lacking, I'm going to quickly take stock of what I currently have and how we got to where it is. So first company is the most difficult for me to justify expanding. It is to capture veterans, and rarely do I use veteran units, but I do one day want to field a full first company. Second company is primarily made up of my first models, my earliest models that I got, and was laid out as my only Primaris company back in the day when they were first introducing Primaris, as there were still many Firstborn kits at that time, and I want Firstborn Marines to be my primary thing. There's two types of Marines, Firstborn and Primaris. Primaris have a ton more modifications to them than the Firstborn Marines, and they were kind of like, what's the word? It was kind of divisive when they came out over whether or not Primaris were going to be liked or not. And a lot of that has changed since then. A lot of what I wanted to do in terms of that organization has changed. So we're going to get there eventually. Third and fourth are primarily firstborn Marines, but when they do get rounded out, what they get rounded out with, they will get rounded out with what makes sense, is what I'm trying to say. And so it will be more than likely be from Mars models because those are far more readily available these days. Fifth is the current project, and will be the first one I show here on the channel. It is made up entirely of Primaris companies and is the first one being built with dreadnoughts and vehicles and characters as a forethought rather than an afterthought. So where it stands currently is that first company consists of a captain that I like model of a captain which I have as my chapter master, then both the old and new Terminator captains and Terminator captains and Terminator armor. That's a bit redundant to say. An apothecary, 15 Terminators, 10 Stern Guard veterans, 5 Vanguard veterans, 3 Blade Guard veterans, and a Venerable Dreadnought. As I said, that totals out to 39 dudes, so that's actually pretty small. Then for the second company, it has a Primaris Captain in Gravis armor and a generic Primaris Captain. I figure lore-wise, it's the same dude, but some battles he just wants to bring out his Primaris armor. Then I have 3 Primaris Lieutenants, a Primaris Ancient, 30 Intercessors, 10 Hellblasters, 10 Infernus Marines, 5 Heavy Intercessors, 10 Assault Intercessors, 6 Inceptors, and a Ballistus Dreadnought, totaling out to 78 models in the company. Third is the first company to have any sizable vehicle presence, and it is 1 generic Space Marine Captain, 1 Apothecary, 1 Ancient, 4 company veterans, 60 tactical Marines, 10 Devastator Marines, 5 Assault Marines, 4 Razorbacks, 3 Predators, 2 Vindicators, and 1 Dreadnought. That totals out to 92 models, but there is a bit of a problem there. In recent editions, I believe actually 10th edition, the current one, is they removed Assault Marines. And now Assault Marines would be proxied as Vanguard veterans. So I might keep them around, or I might actually move them to First Company to serve as Vanguard veterans. Now, Fourth Company, it's a bit harder for me to get an exact count of, a lot of the models that are currently in Force Company, or actually the entirety of Force Company, bar the command element, was bought secondhand. Or not really bought secondhand. It was no, yeah, it was bought secondhand. So these first five, the Primaris captain, the ancient, the company champion, and the two company veterans, those I bought stock. Now, following 40 tactical marines, those were not. A lot of the ones from that batch that made their a lot of models from that uh, purchase did make their way into third company, but were in much better state. The ones that were made with fourth company needed a lot more TLC. And then I have a Dreadnought, which actually is part of my original army, or not really my original army. That was also secondhand, but better condition. Now, fifth company, the current project. It has a captain, ancient, company champion, and two company veterans. Same generic command squad. Then it has an apothecary, a librarian, a tech marine, and a chaplain. These are all characters. These are some. This is the most characters that a single company has that are all unique. That is. Then I have 30 intercessors, 10 hellblasters, 10 assault intercessors and then 5 assault intercessors with jump packs, 5 heavy intercessors, 3 inceptors, a repulsor, an impulsor, a redemptor dreadnought, and a ballistic dreadnought, 2 drop pods, and 1 hammerfall bunker, totaling to 79 models. I don't remember if I said it before this company totaled out to 46. Now, 10th company. Before I forget about these guys, they have 14 scouts, 3 eliminators, and a storm speeder. This totals them out to 18 models. They are the smallest of the companies, but they're also the one with the least use that I ever have. So, adding all of this up, that is 292 minis for my custom chapter so far. And that is not the grand total of all the models I have. I think it's not even half of what I have, and it's not even the grand total of all my Space Marines. And that is a lot of Space Marines. And so, what is the plan from here? So, as I said earlier, Fifth Company is the current company on the list to be finished off, given that the rest of my army is halfway across the United States, so there's that little snag. I can't really touch them if they're always halfway across the country from me. So, as you could probably guess from what I said, it's not too far off from having all of its models, about halfway there, really. Bigger problem is that not a single one of those is painted, but some future videos will be me doing the basing and painting of those models as part of the series, so definitely stay tuned for those. Now, building the chapter isn't the only aspect of this project, but we're gonna tap on that a bit later. The next major step for this project is figuring out what all I need to finish these companies and naming each of my companies, as none of them have received a name yet, bar for this company, the Defenders of Falca. Falca being their chapter planet. As we go along with each major phase of this project, I will reveal more and more of the lore for this chapter, but let's talk about the real world creation of this chapter real quick. So, back when I first got into 40k, about, yeah, 8 years ago, I believe I messed out. It started with the Dark Imperium box set. It was the new Primaris Space Marines versus the Death Guard, with new models for the Death Guard too. And I knew a bit about building minis. Like me and I'd grown up building minis with my dad. I was huge into historical models when I was young, and nothing about painting them. I had never once painted a model up until that time. So the chapter started its existence as that box set, but they weren't yet their own chapter. I was young, and I kind of wanted to do the box art. I originally wanted to run them as the poster boys of Warhammer 40k, the Ultramarines. They were very early in their painting stages when the decision to convert them into a successor chapter was made. And after some digging around a floor, I decided to have a blue, crimson, and gray color scheme and make them a custom Imperial Fist successor chapter. And at that point in time, expansions were slow. I was 13. I had bought Dark Imperium with my own birthday money. Well, yeah, my birthday money. After a couple months of me putting everything together, and with some help from one of the guys at my local game store at the time, which has long since shut down, Dark Imperium was ready, and I was ready to play. After a few games with some good rolls, someone, they know who they are, touched my dice and cursed them. I'm not even kidding. I had decent rolls. Dude picks up the dice, rolls them. I have never been able to roll higher than a 3 with those dice ever again. And I am not ashamed to admit that since then I have lost a vast majority of my games. But I'm not really in it for the victory. I'm in it for the fun. It's a fun game and it actually helped me out a lot. And at that time, I would play 40K almost every weekend at that store. This was before I had my own car, so my mom was driving me to all the games. And as I said, unfortunately, the store would shut down. There were several other game stores that we would wind up playing at, and chapter grew. Like it just kept growing from there. Life would take its turns. I had to take several breaks from gaming due to a variety of reasons. Like I was in sports for a good chunk of high school. Actually, like the early days of this channel, which was when I was in high school, I was also wrestling in high school. I did soccer at one point in time, not for too long though. And then, like junior year of high school, I wound up getting my first job, which was huge for me getting more models of my own. But unfortunately, I would have to take a break from getting models for a decent chunk of time because school, of course. And upon my return, my collection did wind up growing rapidly. But okay, saying it was only school is a bit of a misnomer. It was actually about 2 years of a break from me getting new models because shortly after high school, I began working full time, which with the money I'm getting from that allows me to get more models than I would have before. But having time to play with my schedule, it's getting more likely, but also less likely at the same time. Now, as this collection grew, the lore of the chapter began being established, and the lore of the chapter planet itself changed drastically. In the early days, they were from a planet that would eventually be engulfed by the Tyranids based off of someone that I would rarely fight and was always scared to on the tabletop. And the planet was fairly similar to Earth topographically. The lore has changed so that now they are from a world with this one major supercontinent and dozens of island chains that are home to the population centers. One island chain, not far from the mainland itself, plays host to the chapter fortress. So, that is actually the segue into the other aspects of the project. And they're actually fairly simple. When I get the chance, and this is probably going to be a bit out, I will be working on the construction of the mega board, which will be including my chapter fortress. I have a lot of concept sketches of how the chapter fortress would look, and I won't reveal that to you yet because that could be part of this series is building the chapter fortress. And now I did mention this was an ocean planet. So, boats. I want to make these floating carriers or floating platforms or ships that the Space Marines will use as these auxiliary launch pads for their aircraft or as somewhere to train on water based operations. Now, you may wonder why would Space Marines need seafaring vehicles when they have spaceships? Now, that is because there are sea monsters on this planet. First Company helps out when killing sea monsters for the local populace, and the rest of the chapter is normally deployed to other planets, so there's not really much they could do. When not out and about, they're hunting sea monsters. Real quick, before I forget, I will be posting updates of this project on my Discord server. So if you are interested in this project, I highly suggest you join my Discord server and you get to watch along as I grows. Now, Space Marines aren't the only ones on the planet with ships. Now, there's a fairly sizable Imperial Guard contingent there, and I want to give them their own ships, but that will eventually be a different series, and Yeah, who knows? For long, I may have a video series about those dudes too. So, there we go. This video should serve as the brief intro to a project that might take me years to finish, might not, but one I will see completed. So, I have been Realmfire, and I will see you all next time. Before I forget, tomorrow night I will be live streaming the assembly of a good chunk of models for Fifth Company. See you all then.